Hi guys, welcome to our week 4 meeting. Now let me see who is here. So Robert checking already. So Robert, you get your credit for this week. And then Anne's here, Andrea's here, Sheila, Jonathan. So guys, if you notice last week, I sent everybody an email, asked everybody to reply back to me to let me know that if you participate in the online meeting. So what happened was that apparently I just found this out. Apparently that on the YouTube live, once we finish the session, the live goes away. So all the chat box information is gone. So I didn't know who was here, who wasn't here. So before we go today, I will write down everybody's name and then make sure to get you the credit for this week. You know what? Let me write it down now. So just keep it updated. So Mai is here. Andrea is here. Sheila. And then Jonathan. And don't forget Robert. Robert's here too. All right, so let's talk about this week. We need to go over chapter 5 and also chapter 6. So let's do chapter 5 first. And again, guys, just like before, at any time of the meeting, if you have any questions, just post it into the chat box on YouTube Live on the page, event page. And then once I see it, I'll answer them as soon as possible. But keep in mind there is a time delay, so it's delay about maybe 10-15 seconds. So once I see, I reply back to it. Okay. All right, guys. So let's get started for chapter 5. Let me do my screen sharing. Why is my computer so dirty? Wait, it's not my computer. Oh, no, that's my wall. Oh, never mind. I thought there was something on my screen. Okay. Okay. Full screen sharing. And all right, let's do chapter 5. Okay, so chapter 5, we talk about the elasticity of either supply or demand. Now, the same with elasticity, elasticity just means how flexible you are. So, how responsive you are to different determined change. And then for this elasticity, it is going to be some calculations. So, you guys make sure you have a calculator with you. Okay. All right. So, definitions. Elasticity for demand is a numerical measurement of the responsiveness, so how flexible your QD, which is the quantity demanded, or QS, which is quantity supplied, to one of its determined change. So this can be your income, can be your price of the good, can be the price of other good you buy. So if anytime those factor change, we're going to measure how much does it change our quantity demanded or quantity supplied. So therefore they call this elasticity. Okay, and then the first elasticity for demand, or the first one you're gonna learn is called the price elasticity for demand. So this measures how much our quantity demanded change when the price change. So P over here stands for price. So how much does our quantity demanded change when the price change? And then the formula for it is on the top over here. So the formula is that the price elasticity for demand is equal to the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Now, another way to write about this, that for all your math freaks out there, the elasticity for demand is equal to the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Okay, so the little triangle is called delta. That stands for change. Okay, so the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. All right. So for example, over here, now on this graph, our price increased by 10%, quantity decreased by 15%. So your price elasticity for demand is very simple formula. It's just going to be your 15% divided by 10%, which is 1.5. All right. However, we do have a little issue here. Now, if you notice that the price is increasing, so there's a positive for 10%, and then you see how the quantity over here is decreasing by 50%, so quantity is negative. So if you do your math right, then this shouldn't be 1.5. This should be a negative 1.5. But guys, remember this, that for the price elasticity for demand is always gonna be negative. And the reason why it's negative, because something called the law of, can anybody guess what that is? Law of what? Law of demand. Now, if you remember from law of demand from chapter 4, then when the price goes higher, we buy less. When the price goes lower, we buy more. So between your price and the quantity demanded, they always go different directions. So that's why this answer over here, the price elasticity for demand, is always going to be negative. Now, we don't like negative answers. You don't like negative answers. So only for the price elasticity for demand, every time you finish, you put an absolute value on it, so it always become positive. Okay. So remember, your elasticity demand is always positive because once you finish, we take an absolute value for it. All right. Now, let's keep going. All right. So suppose we have this question over here, and then we have the two prices. We have two quantities, and then we'll find out what is the price elasticity for demand. Now, if you go to most math class, and then for the math class, the formula for price percentage changing whatever, this is the formula I'm going to use. So it's the n value minus the star value over the star value n times 100%. So if you try to do this, let's try to do the percentage change in quantity first. So we have two quantity here, so 8 and 12. Now, depends on which one you think come first, or which one you think is a star value or n value, your answer will be very different. So if you believe that A is the n value and then B is the starting value, then you're going to use 12 minus 8 divided by 8. And this will give you 4 over 8, and that's what, 50%? Now, if you believe in otherwise, that if you believe that the B comes second, A comes first, then we're going to have a different answer. So we're going to have 8 minus 12 over 12, and this will be 4 over 12, and this will be 33%. So which means depends on which one you think come first, that the answer you're going to have for percentage change is very different. So this formula over here, where it says the n value minus the star value divided by the star value times 100%, don't ever use this. This is the wrong formula. Okay, you should never use this for elasticity for demand. So to find elasticity for demand, there's a very specific formula. It's called the midpoint method. Now, I know the PowerPoint doesn't have a good midpoint method on here. Let me open my OneNote. Let me write down what that is for you, okay? Let me open new page. All right, so for the midpoint method, your percentage change is just equals to the difference between 2 points divided by the average between 2 points. So for our quantity here, so percentage change in quantity, this equals to your Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1 plus Q2 divided by 2. So the difference between Q1 and Q2 divided by the average between Q1 and Q2. And then same thing for the price. So percentage change in price, this will be P1 minus P2 over P1 plus P2, and then divided by 2. Okay, so that's your percentage change formula. And then lastly, to find elasticity for demand, just use your percentage change in quantity divided by the percentage change in price, and that'll be the answer for you. All right, now let's try this question one more time. So we have 2 points. we have, let's do the quantity first. So percentage change in quantity. This will be, let's do the difference. So 12 minus 8 over 12 plus 8 divided by 2. So this would be 2 of, well, not 2, this would be 4 on top. Give me eraser, meeting eraser. All right, so this would be 4 on top, and on the bottom, 12 plus 8 is 20. 20 divided by 2 will be 10. So 4 divided by 10, this will be 0.4. And then percentage change in price. So this would be the 250 minus 200 over 250 plus 200 divided by 2. So on top should be 50. On the bottom should be 225. And then let me see. 50 divided by 225. That's a 0.22. And lastly, the elasticity of demand is equal to 0.4 divided by 0.22. And then your answer should be 1.82. Okay, so that's the price elasticity of demand. All right. Oh, somebody else is here. We got one more person. Marimar. Let me get your name down. And guys, do me a favor, after the meeting's over, so probably sometime tomorrow, check your D2L and then check your exam 1 grade. Go to the comment section and then see if I added 2 points comment in your test. Okay. If you don't see it, send me email, I'll edit for you. All right. Now, let's continue. Now, does anybody have any question at this point? Any questions? No? Guys, it's okay to ask me questions. Okay. All right. Okay, let's continue. Now, there are a couple of factors that can influence or change the elasticity of demand. Now, the first factor, so suppose I had this example over here, that the price of breakfast cereal and sunscreen both increased by 20%. So once that happens, which one would it change your behavior? So which one would you stop buying and buy something else? Now, if you look at breakfast cereal, for breakfast cereal, we can buy other stuff for breakfast, right? Like tacos, egos, waffles, pancake, chicken fried rice. So we can eat other stuff besides breakfast cereal. But if the price for sunscreen increased by 20%, can we buy something else besides sunscreen? I mean, you can try to buy an umbrella, right? But what if it's windy outside? Or you can wear long sleeve shirt, but what about your face? How do you cover your face? So it's not that easy, right? I mean, it's not that easy to cover to have a full protection from the sun when you cannot use your sunscreen. So which means sunscreen has a very few number of substitute available, and then consumer don't have that much choices. So sunscreen here will have a lower elasticity, and then breakfast cereal has more number of close substitute. So for breakfast cereal, it will have a higher number of what I'm thinking, elasticity. But guys, if you don't know, let me show you something that it might interest you. So for those of you who don't like sunscreen but still want some face protection from the sun, there is something you can buy. It is currently on sale in Amazon or on Amazon. This good. It's called Facekini. There. So it's called Facekini. It's like a face pack, but the reason why it's called Facekini because I think there's like a bikini for your face. Okay, so it's called face bikini, and then it offers full protection on your face away from the sun. So which means you don't have to wear sunscreen anymore. Now you might be thinking, who in their right mind would ever wear this, right? Let me show you who are these people. So you don't see them here in America, but if any of you ever have a chance to go to China, this face bikini, all these people over here, this bikini is very, very popular in China. So if you ever go to China, if you ever go to a beach in China, if you see people like this, like old grandma, dressing like people about to rob the banks, don't worry, they're not trying there to try to rob you. They're just wearing bikini. Okay, so again, when the price for sunscreen increased by 20%, we cannot do anything else. We have to buy the sunscreen. So therefore, we have a low elasticity on that one. And then for breakfast cereal, you can buy something else. So we have a high elasticity. All right, make sense? All right, next, it's difference between blue jeans and clothing. So again, if the price for blue jeans increase, now blue jeans is very specific. So when the price for blue jean increase, and guess what? We buy something else, right? We buy khakis, we'll buy skirt, we'll buy whatever we want. So we're gonna change our behavior. So we're gonna buy something else. But if the price for clothing increase, can we buy something else besides clothing for the same purpose? Not really, right? We don't have much choice because clothing is very generally defined. And guys, I'm pretty sure that somewhere in your student handbook it says clothing is not optional. So if you come to school, you have to wear clothes. But if you do our online meeting, then guess what? In this case right now, then clothing is optional. So if you don't wear anything, if you're butt naked, nobody knows. Okay, but if you come to school, then clothing is not optional. So between two good, if the good is very narrowly defined, so like blue jeans, khakis, shirts, then there will be very, very high elasticity. So consumer are going to respond to price change and buy something else. But if the good is very generally defined, then like clothing, food, transportation. So when those happens, when the price change, we don't have a choice. We have to buy them regardless. So for those good, when it's very generally defined, we call them very low elasticity. Okay. All right. Next one, between insulin and Caribbean cruise. So guys, between these two good, which one do we have to have? Now, if you're diabetic, you need insulin because if you don't have insulin, you might die. Okay, but nobody will die if they cannot go on to Caribbean cruise, or is there? Currently there's the current record. There is a lady from Florida. She has been on the same ship for the last 6 years. So you know how people go on to cruise, you get off when the cruise is over, you go home, right? This lady, she didn't want to go home. This lady will stay on the ship forever, or at least for the last 6 years. Now, before this ship, she was on another ship for another 8 years. So which means for the last 14 years, she hasn't gone home. Now, this is what she does. And then really, by the way, it's not that expensive to be on the ship forever. Every year, it costs her about $130,000. Now, it sounds like a lot of money, but if you think about it, that you pay for your room, your food, your medical service, so pretty much all the essentials paid for, and then for $130,000, it's a vacation every single day. So this is how she does it. She's not that rich, but she has her own pension, so she has her own retirement money. And luckily, her husband passed away. Luckily, she also has his pension, so that's why she was able to go on to cruise, with two pension and then just pay for it out of pocket. Okay, but really between the two good over here, insulin and Caribbean cruise, we have to have insulin. So when the price for insulin change, and guess what? We cannot change behavior. We have to buy the same amount. And remember, was it last year there was a company selling was it hepatitis C drug? They increased price by 5,000%. And the reason why they were able to do that, because for consumer who need to buy the drug, we don't have any choices. We have to buy it. But for Caribbean cruise, and guess what? We don't have to buy it. When the price increase, we buy something else. Okay. All right. The next one, It's going to be the difference between a short-term change and a long-term change. Now, imagine the price of gasoline is changed. So the price, let's say the price for gasoline doubled. Now for this double, we're gonna double for only 1 week. So which means for, let's say for next week, for the entire week, the price for gasoline will be $4 per gallon. Now, would that change your behavior? I mean, would you buy a smaller car, or would you buy a bicycle for next week? Probably not, right? You probably drive your same car, you probably just go less distance. But imagine if the price change is for the next 10 years. Now, would that change your behavior? Sure, right? Because if for next 10-year change, and guess what? We're gonna probably buy a smaller car, buy a bicycle, or probably gonna do, I don't know, those electric cars. So when the change is for long-term change, then consumers tend to change behavior. But if the change is for short-term change, then consumer wouldn't change behavior. We still buy the same good, and then so short-term change we call it. This has a lower elasticity, so we call them inelastic. But if it's a long-term change, this will have a high elasticity, and we call them elastic. Okay, all right. So this is the 4 factors here. Does anybody have any questions right now? Let me wait for 10 seconds. Andrea, Shayla, Jonathan, Marimar, Mai, any questions? All right, so if no question, let's continue. You're gonna see 5 types of demand curve, and I think this is on the quiz too. So for the 5 type demand curve, the first one is a very vertical demand curve, and for this vertical demand curve, this is called a perfectly inelastic demand. Now what this is, for this type of demand curve, when the price change, quantity doesn't change any. So if you notice here that the price goes down by 10% and then quantity change by 0%. So your elasticity for demand equal to 0, and this is called a perfectly inelastic demand. And the demand curve is perfectly vertical. And then this is a very, very extreme case. Normally you don't see this in the marketplace. But if you can imagine that if not just if there's a market for air, the air breathing in, then the market for air will be a perfectly inelastic demand, because for consumers, we cannot change our behavior. We buy the same amount of air regardless how much price is. All right, so that's the first one. Now, second one, you're gonna see a very steep demand curve, so very steep, and the elasticity is less than 1. This is called elastic demand. And then for elastic demand, consumers, we care about price change. So just a little bit, really not that much. So when the price change, the quantity only change by a little bit. So that's called inelastic demand. And then most of the necessities, most of those, remember the short-term change, they're the inelastic demand. Elastic demand, I mean unelastic, this is when you have almost like a 45-degree line. So elasticity equal to 1, and this is called unelastic. And then for unelastic, how much is changed by the price is matched by how much changed by quantity. So 10% versus 10%, then elasticity equal to 1, and it's called unelastic. All right, and the next one is called elastic demand. For elastic demand, it's somewhat flat. So for this somewhat flat demand curve, elasticity is more than 1. And then this is called elastic demand. So for this case over here, consumers, we care about price change a lot. So when the price change by a little bit, we change our behavior by a lot. So we call this elastic demand. So many of the luxury good, many of the long-term changes, many of the good with a lot of number of substitute. So Robert, this answer to your question. So the reason why those good are very elastic, because you have more number of substitute available. Okay. And the next one, last one, is when you have a perfectly horizontal demand curve or flat demand curve. This is called perfectly elastic demand. So for this market over here, consumers are extremely sensitive to price change. Then when the price increases by just a little bit, we don't buy anymore. We buy something else. So it's a very extreme case. Almost never seen it happen, but this is called a perfectly elastic demand. Now later on, when we move on to chapter for perfect competition, perfect competition, you're going to see this again. So you're going to see a perfectly flat demand curve for perfect competition. Okay. Um, all right, so here are some um, real elasticities in the real world. If you notice, the X has a very low elasticity, it's only 0.1. Now the reason why X is very low elasticity because for one, like X are necessity, they are not a luxury good, so it has a very low elasticity. And also this term X, it is very general. It doesn't really say what kind of egg it is. So it doesn't say, this is a chicken egg or duck egg or red egg or organic egg. So it doesn't say what kind of egg it is. It's very general, therefore has a very low elasticity. And then Mountain Dew here has a very high elasticity. So the reasons are, again, this is a very specific. So Mountain Dew, not Sprite, not Pepsi. And then also the Mountain Dew is not a necessity. So we don't have to have it. Therefore has a very high elasticity. Okay. All right. Let's look at this graph over here. Now, if you guys see it, that on this same demand curve, depends on where you are, your elasticity for demand is very different. So on the top portion of demand curve, our elasticity is 5, which is more than 1, and this is called elastic demand. And then on the bottom portion, this is less than 1, and that's an inelastic demand. And over here equal to 1, that's a elastic demand. Oh, I'm sorry, unielastic. So really for the same demand curve, it depends on where you are, your elasticity is very different. And usually on the top portion demand curve, the consumers will care about the price change. So we're very elastic for the demand. And then on the bottom portion demand curve, when the good is very cheap, we don't care about the price change. So consumers are very inelastic to demand. And then somewhere in the middle, that we call this one unielastic because your elasticity go to 1. Okay. All right, let's keep going. That's important. Well, guys, this is important, so you might want to write this down. Total revenue equals to price times quantity. But however, according to law of demand, the price and quantity goes in opposite direction. So when the price is going down, quantity is going up. When the price is going up, quantity is going down. So when you multiply this together, it's hard to know when your total revenue is increasing or decreasing because they're always working against each other. So there's a quick way to know when your total revenue is either increasing or decreasing. Now we can use elasticity to measure how does the total revenue change. Now if you go back to the graph we did before, this graph over here, so total revenue equals price times quantity. So guys, at price of 30, so at $30, how much is our total revenue? So price of 30 times quantity of 0, so 30 times 0 is 0. Now, if we lower the price from 30 to 20, how much is my total revenue? So 20 is price, 20 is quantity, so 20 times 20, that's a 400. So which means when the demand is elastic, so when demand is elastic, you should lower the price to increase total revenue. And that's when demand is elastic. Now, vice versa, if the demand is inelastic, we can increase price to increase total revenue. Now, last one, if your demand is unit elastic, then don't change your price anymore because your total revenue is already maximized. Okay, so again, when your demand is elastic, we can lower price, increase total revenue. When demand is inelastic, we have to increase price to increase total revenue. When demand is inelastic, don't do anything because the total revenue is already maximized. All right, now does that. Let's keep going. I'm going to skip all the section on the price elasticity of supply. That's really not important. This two slide is very important. You're going to see this on the test too. So two more elasticity. First one is called income elasticity for demand. So this is your percentage changing quantity divided by the percentage changing income. So this will measure if the good is either normal good or inferior good. So if your income elasticity is more than 0, so positive, they are normal good. And if income elasticity is less than 0, they are inferior good. And then the last one is your cross price elasticity. So it's a percentage change in quantity for good 1 divided by the percentage change in price for good B, or good 2. So we're comparing the quantity for one good against the price of the other good. And if your cross price elasticity is more than 0, then we call this two good a substitute. And if this two good elasticity is less than 0, then we call this two good complements. Okay, so those are very important, and I believe they're on the quiz too. So be careful about it. Now, the signage matters. Because either negative or positive, it will show you what the answer is. Okay, so be careful with the signage. Okay, so that's it for chapter 5. And then next, let's talk about. Now, before I go to chapter 6, does anybody have any question on chapter 5? Any questions? All right, if no questions, let's go to chapter 6. But you know what, guys, before we go to chapter 6, let me go get some water. I have a really dry throat, okay? Give me 1 minute, I'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. Okay, let's talk about chapter 6. Now, chapter 6 is mostly on government policy, and it's really just about your price ceiling and price floor, and also tax. So let's talk about definition first. So price ceiling is the legal maximum price on a good and service. So example would be rent control. And then price floor is the legal minimum price on good and service, and minimum, the example would be a minimum wage. Now, if you don't know what rent control is, we don't have that in Houston. So Houston don't have it, but if you go to cities like San Francisco or New York, they have them in those cities. And then the reason why they have them in those cities is because rent can be very expensive. So in certain neighborhood, the government will actually put a maximum limit on how much the rent can be. So that's called a rent control apartment. Now let me give you an example. I have a classmate, or I had a classmate when he was in graduate school. After first year in finance, he got a job with a bank in New York. So good for him, right? That's a very good job, because when you go to investment, that's what you want to do. Go to New York, go to Wall Street, and be a banker. And then his first year salary, he was getting paid $100,000. I mean, come on, that's amazing, really. Because for somebody who's only 25-year old, getting paid $100,000, that's amazing. But there's a problem. The problem is that he was going to New York, so apparently rent was very, very expensive. So when I went to New York, he first tried to find an apartment in Manhattan, and then he couldn't find anything, because in Manhattan, the cheapest price. I mean, imagine a studio, not even one bedroom apartment, but a studio apartment will cost you about $3,000 per month. So that's too much. I couldn't afford it. So he was able to find an apartment that's cross river, so in Brooklyn. And then it wasn't even a good part of Brooklyn. It was in like a very bad part of Brooklyn, so a very high crime rate. So in the bad part of Brooklyn, he was able to get a roommate, so get a 2-bedroom apartment. And then for the 2-bedroom apartment, he has a bigger bedroom, so his share of the rent, he pays a little more. So he pays about what do you help me, $1,500 for half of the 2-bedroom apartment, and then his roommate pays $1,300. So which means a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, in the bad part of Brooklyn, costs him about $2,800, because rent is very, very expensive. So that's why in New York City, in San Francisco, to rent control, we should put a limit on how much the apartment can be. Now we all know what minimum wage is, right? So minimum wage is what's the minimum you can be paid for a job or service. So for the minimum wage, now currently in America, I think the minimum wage was $7.25. And then really for the $7.25, it depends on where you are. So for $7.25, that's the national level, but certain cities, they have a higher minimum wage. So if you guys look at cities like San Francisco, San Francisco is coming, but Seattle is already introducing $15 per hour, and then LA is working on it. So some cities in America, they're introducing a higher minimum wage. Okay, so again, minimum wage is the lowest you can pay for something. Now let's look at each one. So for the market for apartments, suppose for this market over here, our current price for market is at $800, and then quantity is at 300. And then next, let's say the government put a rent control in here. So the legal maximum price, which is called price ceiling. And then for this price ceiling, let's suppose the price ceiling is placed at $1,000. Now, this price ceiling is very special, because for this price ceiling, because it's above what the prices already is. Now remember, price ceiling is the maximum price. So if your maximum price is already above what the price is right now, then this $800, we're okay, because it's already below the maximum, so we don't have to change. So this price ceiling, if it's above price, if your price ceiling is above equilibrium price, we call this not binding. Now another way to think about it, how fast do you guys drive on 59? Like what's the average speed you drive on 59 when there's very light traffic? Anybody? Personally, I usually goes about 75 on 59. But here's the thing: what is the speed limit on 59? Now, if you check your signs on next to the street, you'll notice the speed limit is usually about 65. So usually I will speed on 59. But guys, don't worry. I drive a Prius, so nobody will ever catch me for speeding because nobody ever believed that a Prius will speeding. But let's suppose the speed limit is changed. So let's say for tomorrow, the speed limit is not 65 anymore. The speed limit is going to be 135. Now, would that change your behavior? Now, would you go 5 miles more than 135? Please don't. Okay, it's not safe. So anytime if your limit, your ceiling is higher than what is already now, then we don't have to change anymore, because your current behavior is already okay. We don't have to change anything. So this is called a not binding. So we don't have to change anything. All right, now next, now vice versa, if your price ceiling is below equilibrium price, then this is called a shortage, because it's also called a binding constraint. And then for a binding constraint, you will be creating a shortage in the economy. Okay, so because when the price goes down from 800 to 500, at 500, the quantity supply is only 250, quantity demand is 400. So demand is more than supply, then we'll have a shortage. And then that is the case in many neighborhoods in New York City and also San Francisco. There's a shortage of affordable apartment in those cities. Therefore, many families they want to move into apartment, but everything is full because all those there's a shortage for it. Okay. All right, next, let's look at this market for labor. So suppose right now the market for labor, the equilibrium price is $6 per hour, and then quantity is 500 labors. Now, let's suppose the new price floor, so the new minimum price is set at $5. Now, at $5, this will have no effect in the marketplace. And the reason why I have no effect in the marketplace, because the market is already selling at $6. So your new price floor at $5 is below the equilibrium, and we call this one not binding. So if your price floor is below equilibrium, this is called non-binding. So we don't have to change anymore. And again, guys, imagine you're getting paid $7.25 per hour right now. And then let's say next week, the minimum wage for the entire nation is lowered from $7.25 to $6. Now, do you think your boss will come in here and says, hey, I will lower your wage from $7.25 to $6 because the minimum wage is lower now? Well, that normally don't happen unless you have an asshole manager. So because of that, this is called non-binding price floor. Okay. All right, and then vice versa, if your price floor is above equilibrium, this is called a labor surplus, or I'm sorry, this is called binding constraint. And then for binding constraint, this will cause a labor surplus. All right, now, so that's your price floor, price ceiling. Let me see. All right, tax. So this is the last part of chapter 6. So for tax, this is how I want to think about tax. Tax is just the difference between how much buyer pays, so buyer price, and then how much the seller receive, so seller price. That is your tax. So it's not about what percentage you pay, it's just the difference between how much you pay and how much seller receive. Now let's look at this question over here. So we have the market for pizza. So for this market for pizza, currently, let's say currently the price is set at $10, quantity is 500. Now, we're going to put a tax on it. And for this tax, we're going to put a tax on demand. And remember, if you're taxed on demand, so tax on demand, demand curve will shift down. Okay, now we're not talking about left or right, we're talking about down. Okay, so if you're taxed on demand, demand curve will shift down. And if you're taxed on supply, then supply will shift higher or up. So this is not increase or decrease. This is just shifting up or down. So for the first one, we're gonna have a tax on demand. So demand curve do shift down, and the shift will be exactly how much tax is. So the tax is $1.50. So we shift our demand curve lower by exactly $1.50. Then your new equilibrium will be at this point. That's your new equilibrium. And if you compare your new equilibrium, the price added is $9.50. This price, that's how much the buyer price is. So buyer pays $9.50. And then for the seller price, how much seller pays from your new equilibrium, go up to your old demand curve. And then on the old demand curve, this price, that's how much buyer pays. So buyer pays 11, seller receive 9.50, and then this difference over here, that is your $1.50 tax. Okay, everybody got it? So remember a couple of steps. First step, you want to shift your demand curve lower by exactly how much the tax is. So you go from D1 to D2, and then as your D2, your new demand curve, this is your new intersection. From a new intersection that's on the old supply curve, you get your price for supply. So that's how much seller receive, and then go up to your new demand curve. That's how much buyer pays. So buyer pays 11, seller receive 950. The difference 150. That is your tax. All right, and then now the incidence of tax. That's just how much tax buyer pays and how much tax seller pays. So what you want to do, just compare to what the price before and what is tax now. So for buyer, the tax before the price before was 11, or the price before was 10. Now the price is $11. So buyer pays $1 tax, and then for sellers, the price before was 10. The price now is 950. So seller pays a 50 cents tax. Oh no, go back. So seller pays a 50 cents tax. Okay, that's called the incidence of tax. And then for tax on sellers, you do the same thing. You'll be shifting your supply curve up. So by exactly how much the tax is. So this is $1.50. And then this is your new intersection. From the new intersection, you get your price for buyer. And that's because it's on the old demand curve. And then go to your new, go to your old supply curve. At this point, that's your price for seller. So buyer price will be at 11, seller price at 950. So which means doesn't matter which side you put a tax on. You put a tax on buyer pays 11, seller receive 950. You put a tax on sellers, buyer pays 11, seller receive 950. So either one is the same thing. So the same with tax, doesn't matter who you tax on, the end result is all the same. Okay. Let me see. I think we're almost finished. Oh, elasticity. So just one comment for elasticity. Between supply and demand, whoever is more elastic will pay a higher, or will pay a lower tax. Whoever is inelastic will pay a higher tax. So you're going to compare elasticity between these two curves over here. So again, whoever is more elastic will pay a lower tax. Whoever is more inelastic will pay a higher tax. Okay, so I think this is it for chapter 6. Now, does anybody have any question right now? Anybody have any questions? Let me wait for a little bit. We have a delay here. All right, if nobody has any questions, let's call a meeting here. Now, before I close everything, guys, give me 1 second. Let me go into D2L, get everybody the extra credit for this week. Okay, so this way you get your credit for it. All right, got Jonathan. Where's Jonathan? Jonathan's here. Sheila, where's Sheila? Sheila's here. And then mine's here. Last one, Andrea. Where's Andrea? Andrea. Okay, Andrea's here. All right, I got everybody here. So guys, if no questions, I'm gonna stop the meeting here. And then guys, if you have any question, remember, ask me, either send me an email or send me a message on Google Plus, and I will answer them as soon as I see it. Okay, so guys, have a nice week. Good luck on your homework, and don't forget your quiz are due, your assignments are due, and also your discussion are due. Okay, guys, have a nice week. I see you next week at the same time. Bye.